Breaking news. Please stand by for another C2C World News Now current event. Hello, today is Sunday, and this is the 9th day of October 2016.
15 years ago, the US started its military campaign in Afghanistan. America's mission, of course, was to rid the country of both Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. But more than a decade later, the security situation in Afghanistan is vastly worse than it was, and the Taliban consistently strengthens its grip on the nation. Guyane Hijacking reports.
How many times Americans heard the war in Afghanistan is almost over, almost won, and yet it drags on, more silently than before, but it continues, and Washington keeps changing plans.
The United States will maintain approximately 8,400 troops in Afghanistan into next year, through the end of my administration. Together with our allies and the Afghan government, we have agreed that this is the year we will conclude our combat mission in Afghanistan. It is in our vital national interest to send an additional 30,000 U.S. troops to Afghanistan.
I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war.
Having crippled Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan a long time ago, the U.S. spent years and enormous resources fighting the Taliban. Despite these efforts, the Taliban today is resurgent. It is set to control roughly a third of Afghanistan. And guess what? Terrorists are finding a safe haven there again. ISIL has gained a foothold in Afghanistan. It runs a training camp there, even a school for children. All of which makes one ask, after all the lives sacrificed and resources spent, could Afghanistan be back to square one? One thing that did change dramatically in Afghanistan since the beginning of the war is opium production. It skyrocketed. 90% of heroin in the world now comes from Afghanistan. Roughly a year before the war, the Taliban banned opium cultivation, decided it was un-Islamic. And you see how over the years, it went up 40 times from 2001. The Taliban now actually use drug production as a source of income. The chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joseph Dunford, recently described the fight against the Taliban as a stalemate. The insurgents made gains as the U.S. withdrew the bulk of its troops. Washington now calls for a reconciliation with the Taliban. The Taliban do not seem to reciprocate. In April, they admitted to an attempt on Secretary of State John Kerry's life when he was in Afghanistan.
Washington is pretty much paralyzed at this point, and nobody has an answer yet of what to do. The former U.S. commander in Afghanistan, General Petraeus, just called yesterday, in fact, for a permanent U.S. garrison in Afghanistan. And unless the U.S. government decides to pull the plug on its ill-fated Afghan adventure, that's what's going to happen. The U.S. troops will have to stay on or face a humiliating defeat.
Afghanistan has turned into America's quagmire, and the question of troop withdrawal has become, as the saying goes, damned if you do, damned if you don't. In Washington, I'm Guyane Hijacking, RT.
This has been a C2C World News Now current event. Stay safe, everyone.